गुड इवनिंग फ्रेंड्स। अनीता भुजवानी ज्ञान भारत में आप सभी लोगों का हार्दिक स्वागत करती हूँ। फ्रेंड्स, आज हम लोगों के बीच में रॉबर्ट श्वार्ट्ज जी हैं, जिन्होंने योर सोल्स गिफ्ट लिखी है, योर सोल्स प्लान और योर सोल्स लव। ये 3 बुक के द्वारा उन्होंने हमको बहुत ही ज्यादा विजडम दिया है। हम हमेशा प्री बर्थ प्लानिंग के बारे में जो भी सुनते हैं, सीखते हैं, सबसे ज्यादा उसमें रोल हमारे रॉबर्ट श्वार्ट्ज जी का ही रहता है। हम जितना भी ग्रैटिट्यूड देना चाहें, जितने भी ह्यूमैनिटी ग्रैटिट्यूड देना चाहे, शब्द कम पड़ेंगे, परंतु उनके विजडम के आगे बहुत ही कम होगा हमारा ग्रैटिट्यूड देना। उनकी तीसरी बुक योर सोल्स लव बहुत ही अच्छी बुक है, जो मैंने किंडल से मंगाया और आप लोगों से मैं शेयर कर रही हूँ। आज हमारे बीच में रॉबर्ट श्वार्ट्ज जी हैं, तो बिना समय गंवाए हुए हम उनका स्वागत करते हैं और उनको हैंड ओवर करते हैं मीटिंग। तो उसके पहले माही कुछ इंट्रोडक्शन वगैरह देंगी आपको रॉबर्ट जी का। तो यस, ओवर टू यू माही।
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Auntie. So, welcome to Gyaan Bharat. Hello, all. Hello, everyone. Hello, all masters. We all face challenges in our lives which sometimes seem meaningless, and we find ourselves stuck in patterns. Today, we have a special guest, Robert Schwartz, a pioneer in the field of pre birth planning, a past life regression therapist, and the author of 3 phenomenal books: Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gift, and Your Soul's Love. It's an honor to have Rob here with us to understand our life's plan from before we were born and how can we move past our stuck patterns to live our greatest lives. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you.
Over
It's a
to
pleasure
you.
to be here.
Over to you, Ankita.
Hello, Robert. Apologies, I was not able to unmute myself. And a very warm and heartfelt welcome to you, and a lot of gratitude. I have all 3 of your treasures here with me. And we are a regular with your work, with all your interviews with Inspire Nation and other channels that you go for. And it's an absolute pleasure an honor to have you here speak with us and give your time to us. And so we've already gone through the introduction of Gyaan Bharat. Neeta Auntie and Mahi actually are they are very proactive and kind of protagonists for this group. And they have been leading a lot of sessions, intriguing sessions on all spiritual topics. And we are very fond of your books, and we do chapter-wise discussion, and we deal and talk about a lot of problems and challenges and everything that goes on with everyone's life on a daily basis. So Gyaan Bharat basically is a non-profit virtual platform on the mission of spreading the awareness of meditation and soul science. We have been running this platform since 2 years, and we conduct group meditation and wisdom sharing sessions, as I said, every day. A lot of lives have been transformed through the precious wisdom shared in all of your pre-birth planning books. We have discussed your soul's gift, your soul's love, and we are on our way to discuss soul's love chapters. And so before anything, Rob, I would like you to speak a few words, introduce yourself. And I know your journey of meeting the psychic medium and how you left your corporate job, but we would love to hear it from you. How did you start, and how did you get to know the pre-birth planning?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I want to thank all of you for inviting me to be with you today. It's an honor to be here with you. And I appreciate all the interest in the subject of pre-birth planning. So to give you an idea of my background, I was actually in the corporate world for a number of years, doing marketing and communications, self-employed. I did not like that work at all. It was very, very unfulfilling. But I had the distinct sense that there was some particular purpose or some kind of calling, some reason why I had come to Earth, and that I wasn't doing whatever it was that I came here to do, but I didn't know what it was that I came here to do. And I also didn't know at first how to figure out what it was I came here to do. And so, I come from a very conventional background. And so at the beginning of my search for greater meaning, I tried very conventional ways. I tried very conventional ways of figuring out why I'm here. Career counseling, talking to family and friends, none of that really made any difference. And so on May 7 of 2003, I did something that I had never done before. I had a session with a psychic medium. Mediumship is not part of my background. I wasn't even sure if I believed in it, but nothing else was working. So I went ahead and I had this session with the medium. Right at the beginning of the session, right out of the box, she said to me, "Your spirit guides are here." And I said, "What is a spirit guide?" I mean, I'd never even heard the term before. And so she explained that a guide is a highly evolved, non-physical being with whom we plan our lives before we're born and who guides us after we come into body. And then she said, "Your guides would like to speak directly with you." And she started to channel them. And the very first thing they said to me was, "You planned your life, including your biggest challenges, before you were born." Well, I had never heard of anything like this. And it sounded absurd to me when I first heard it. But then the guides went into this very long monologue about what my challenges had been and why I had wanted before I was born to have those experiences. And what was really impressive about this is that the guides knew what all of my challenges had been, even though I didn't tell them anything about myself, nor had I told the medium anything about myself before the session started. So as you can imagine, if you're talking to beings who know literally everything about you without you telling them anything, that gives them a lot of credibility. So they explained to me why I had planned my challenges. And I came out of that session with my mind just blown wide open. And I thought about this perspective again and again, constantly for weeks thereafter. And the effect that it had on me was that it really created quite a deep healing, because it allowed me for the very first time to see deeper meaning or deeper purpose to the most difficult things that had happened. And then I thought to myself, well, if this perspective about pre-birth planning can create this kind of healing for me, then certainly it can create that kind of healing for other people. And that was when I first started to think about writing a book on the subject. Now, within a very short time of the session with the medium, a couple other very important things happened. The first was, and this was just within a few weeks of the session with the medium, I was home in my apartment in Chicago, Illinois, where I lived at the time, just having an average workday. And in the middle of the afternoon, I decided to take a break and go for a walk. So I was walking down the sidewalk in the middle of the afternoon, and I had this experience in which every time I looked at another person, this feeling of pure, overwhelming, divine love would wash over me. Now, I had never heard of anything like this or read about anything like this, but I understood intuitively what was happening, which was I was in some kind of enhanced communion with my own soul. In other words, it's as though my soul were saying to me, this love is who you really are. This is your true nature. I remember this experience very, very clearly. The first person I saw after this feeling washed over me was a cab driver. He was just sitting behind the wheel of his cab waiting for a customer to come along. Of course, he was a total stranger to me. And I looked at this man who I had never seen before and just felt the most blissful, pure, overwhelming love that you can possibly imagine. And there are really no words to even describe it, but this was as close as I could get. And then I looked up and there was a man's barber shop on the corner. I looked through the window and I saw the barber cutting a customer's hair. Again, two total strangers. But as I looked at them, there again was this feeling of just pure, blissful, divine love. And then I turned around and I saw a young woman, a mother, pushing an infant in a stroller down the sidewalk. Again, I'd never seen them before, but as I looked at them, there again was this feeling of pure, unconditional love. Everywhere I looked, when I saw another person, this feeling would wash over me. So this really added to the session that I had with the medium, and it completely changed my understanding of who I am, who each one of us really is and what life is all about. It's all about this kind of unconditional love. And then within a short time of that experience, something else very important happened. I was introduced to a woman who has the ability to go into trance and channel her own soul. So at that point, I had already started to think about writing a book about pre-birth planning. And I said to her, could I speak with your soul about the subject of pre-birth planning? And she said yes, fortunately for me. So she and I got together 5 times for a total of about 15 hours. And in this 15 hours of channeling, this huge volume of information came forward that verified everything my guides had said through the medium, but expanded greatly upon it. So her soul told me in detail how pre-birth planning works, which challenges had been discussed for her, which ones had been chosen and why, which ones had not been chosen and why not. And all of this information really, in many ways, served as the foundation for all 3 books that I went on to write. So you had 3 very important things happening within a short time. The session with the medium, in which my guides told me about pre-birth planning, the experience of my soul as pure unconditional love, and this woman's channeling of her soul. The combination of those 3 things got me to say, okay, I will leave the corporate world and attempt to write a book about pre-birth planning. Now, when I made that decision, of course, the first question I had to figure out was, how am I going to find out what people planned before they were born? And even though I had such a great session with the medium, it actually didn't even occur to me at the time that there are mediums and channels who can access this kind of information. The thought I had, this was shortly after the internet had come into existence. So the thought I had was, well, you know, we've got the internet now. There must be people somewhere in the world who remember planning their life. I'll use the internet to find them. So I went online, I went to every spirituality message board I could find, and I posted a notice saying, author, writing a book about how we plan our lives before we're born. If you remember planning your life, please contact me. And I started to get thousands of emails from people all over the world, and not a single one of them remembered planning their current lifetime. They were writing in with stories about past lives on Earth, past lives on other planets, non-physical lifetimes, but there was nobody out of thousands of people who actually remembered planning the current lifetime. And this went on for a number of months. Finally, I began to wonder if I was ever going to be able to do this. And at that point, I said a very important prayer. I said, dear God, if you want me to write a book about pre-birth planning, I'll do it, but I need some help. And wouldn't you know it, within a very short time of making that request of the universe, I just happened to come into contact with several very good mediums and channels who, in one way or another, could figure out what somebody planned before they were born. So those people became my colleagues. And to this day, I'm still working with some of them. Now, a couple of them have transitioned. They're now back on the other side. And so I added a couple new mediums to the team. And also, since the first book came out, I took the training to do between lives soul regressions, which is a form of hypnosis in which the client themselves in a trance state speaks with their council of elders. Their council consists of the wise beings who know everything about them and who oversee their evolution. So in a between lives regression, you can ask your council literally any question you have about your life. And if it's for your highest good to know the answer, they will answer the question. So the new book, which came out last year, Your Soul's Love, that book is a combination of sessions with mediums and channels and between lives soul regressions. But in a nutshell, that is what happened. And now I have a completely different and much, much more fulfilling, rewarding, gratifying life. It's actually a lot of fun. It's infinitely interesting, infinitely more fun than being in the corporate world. And a really nice benefit that I never foresaw, and it has just happened over the last couple of years. About 2 years ago, my wife, Liesl, started to spontaneously channel. And she channels a collective of beings who we call the beings of light, mainly because they won't give us a name for themselves. But this is a collective that lives in unity consciousness, in a state of union. very high vibration, very wise, very loving. And so she now does channelings in my online workshops. We teach a course together for the Shift Network. We have a monthly membership and mentorship program called Rise to the Path. And she is as much a part of that as I am. And she's channeling for the fourth book, which I'm writing at this time. So this has worked out in just miraculous ways that I could never have anticipated. And now we have this amazing life where we do what we love. We feel like we're making a difference in people's lives. I never felt that way about the corporate world. I felt like anybody else could have done what I was doing, and I was just not fulfilling my purpose for being here. But now I feel that I am. So in a nutshell, that's my story.
Well, thank you, Robert. We're absolutely stoked to hear you writing a fourth book, and we're very much looking forward to that. And lots of love to Liesel, sorry. I've seen her; she's fantastic. So you mentioned the Council of Elders, Robert. Just to start off with the question, so the theme that we are going today is we'll be asking you a couple of questions that we have collected from people here and narrowed it down to the relevant question that would benefit all. And we'd be asking you a series of those questions, and then we can go ahead and see if we have time for meditation and some final notes. So before we start to the question, you mentioned the Council of Elders. Can you just share how did you get to know about them, and can we actually change our soul's plan with them, and how do we know that our request is kind of accepted?
So the Council of Elders was actually discovered by an American hypnotist named Michael Newton, who invented the field of between lives regressions back in the 1990s. My understanding of what happened is that Newton was using hypnosis for fairly conventional purposes. And then one day he had a client who spontaneously, without any prompting from Newton, crossed back over to the other side. He went home, so to speak. And he started to tell Newton in extraordinary detail everything about our lives on the other side. So he told him about the homes we create for ourselves, the classes we take, the games we play. And one of the things he told Newton about was the Council of Elders. Apparently, everybody who is incarnate on Earth has a Council of Elders. Again, these are the very wise, loving, and highly evolved beings who oversee your personal evolution. They know literally everything about you, everything about the plan for your current lifetime, and everything about the plan for everything you did in every past life you've had. And that includes lives on other planets. It includes non-physical lifetimes as well. So in the Between Lives Soul Regression, which you can do either as a private session one-on-one with me, or we do it in all of my 1- and 2-day workshops. What happens in a Between Lives regression, we start with some preliminary steps to help you relax physically and mentally. Then I guide you into a past life. It's almost always the past life that had a big impact on the plan for your current lifetime. You experience 4 different scenes, usually 4 in the past life, the last of which is the death scene. The part of your consciousness that is having the experience leaves the body in the death scene. It crosses back over to the other side. When you get there, most people are greeted by a spirit guide, but it could also be an angel, an archangel, an ascended master, a deceased loved one, or any combination thereof. You talk briefly with whoever greets you about why you were shown that particular past life, and then you ask that being to take you to your council. When you get in front of the council, if you're doing it as a private session, you would have filled out an intake form, and you put all your questions for the council on the intake form. So then I prompt you to ask the questions one by one. That way you don't have to try to remember them. If you're doing it in a group in the online workshop, and by the way, it works just as well in a group online as it does in a private session. If you're doing it as a group, I prompt the group as a whole to ask a very long and very extensive series of questions that covers all the major areas of their life. So by the time you're done, you should have a pretty good idea of what you planned, why you made those plans, how you're doing in terms of fulfilling your plan, and how you can better fulfill your plan. And I know you asked me another question in there, and I forgot what it was. What was the rest of the question?
So it was can we like change our soul's plan with them if the
Right.
challenges feel too overwhelming? And how do we actually know in physical life that our request was accepted by them?
You not only can you change your plan, but people amend their plans regularly all the time. And there are a couple of ways you can do that. One is through prayer or just speaking aloud to God, source, your guides, your masters, your angels. You can actually say to them, this is too difficult. I would like it to be easier. And if it's for the highest good of all beings, that's the key. If your request is for the highest good of all beings, then your request will be granted. But there's another way in which everybody is constantly changing their pre-birth plan. And that is when you're asleep at night, you leave the physical body, you go back over to the other side in your astral or spirit body. And when you're there, you meet with these significant people in your life. And you're essentially asking one question, which is, are we learning what we came to learn? If the answer to that question is yes, then carry on. But if the answer is no, then you talk about what changes you need to make to the plan so that you can learn those things. So this happens all the time. How do you know if your request has been accepted? You might not know, or it might be apparent to you. It could really be either one.
Thank you so much, Robert, for that fantastic introduction. And now we'll start with the questions. So Mahi, would you like to start?
Sure. So the first question is infertility a part of the soul's plan? What could be the reason to choose that? And what lesson does a soul want to learn? Seeking solutions like IVF or surrogacy, is it karmic interference or free will to change the preset soul plan?
So we have to first understand what is meant by pre-birth plan. Sometimes people take that to mean that each person has only one pre-birth plan and you're either following the plan or you're not. That is not the way it works. Everybody has a large number of pre-birth plans with an S. If you think of each pre-birth plan as being like a single sheet of paper, then everybody has their own stack of sheets of paper, and they vary according to vibration. The sheets that are at the top of the stack, that's where most of the learning is done through love, peace, and joy, not so much through pain and suffering. The lower vibrational plans are at the bottom of the stack. That's where the learning is done through pain and suffering, not through love, peace, and joy. And there's everything in the middle. So what you want to do is to activate the highest vibrational pre-birth plan that you can activate. And basically the way you do that is by being the most loving person you can be. Anytime you have to make a decision, whether big or small, if you ask yourself the question, what would love, with a capital L, what would love do now? Whatever the answer to that question is, if you do that, you activate the higher vibrational plans. Now, in regard to IVF, it would almost certainly be planned as a possibility or a probability. It could be planned as a certainty, but that is much more unusual. The number of things that are planned as absolute certainties is actually pretty small. And that would be things like, for example, if you're born with a physical handicap that can't be treated by medical science in the time period in which you're incarnating, which is something you would know before coming to body, then short of what we call a miracle, you will have that handicap for the duration of that lifetime. Or your choice of parents. Obviously, once you're born, you can't change who your parents are. So choices like that are set as certainties. They're written in stone. But most things are planned as possibilities or probabilities. IVF would be one of those things. The more important that experience is to the soul, the higher the probability. Now, why would somebody want to experience infertility? Well, a lot of the pre-birth planning of challenges has to do with the soul level desire to cultivate and express certain qualities that are important to the soul. I call these qualities divine virtues. And in my work, there have been 28 or 29 that come up more than others. It's things like unconditional love, compassion, patience, empathy, faith, trust, acceptance, and so on. So let's ask the question, what could somebody learn in terms of divine virtues by experiencing infertility? Well, a lot of different things. Acceptance would be number one. Faith and trust would be right up there. Patience could certainly be learned through that. Empathy, and probably a number of others as well. So I would be thinking of it in those terms. And you asked another question. Can you remind me what that was?
Is it karmic interference or free will to change the preset soul plan?
It's free will. And the reason it's not karmic interference is that if you as a soul really, really want to have a certain experience and you don't want anything to interfere with that experience, it's very easy to arrange for that before you're born. So you, patient of your birth, you pick your nuclear family members, you pick the point in linear time in which you're going to incarnate. So if you really wanted to make sure that you're going to have the experience of infertility, you could easily pick a time period in which there's no technology to treat it. That's very easy to set up. Or you could put yourself in a geographic location or in a family where you wouldn't have access to it, or maybe not the financial resources to take advantage of it. There are many ways you could make sure that you're going to have the experience of infertility. And that's why it's not karmic interference. People ask that question all the time in regard to finding out about their pre-birth plan. They say, well, if I find out what my plan is, then aren't I interfering with the plan itself? The answer is the same as with infertility. If you didn't want to know anything about pre-birth planning, you could incarnate in a point in linear time in which you wouldn't have access to this information, or you could incarnate into, for example, a religious family where you would never hear about something like this, or if you did hear about it, they would say something like, well, that's just talking to the devil. Don't pay any attention to that kind of thing. So this is very easy to arrange. It's not karmic interference at all.
Ankita, over to you.
Thank you. So, Robert, during the pandemic, many people have lost their jobs, and many of which have many of those cases have resulted in deep depression and mental disorders. Could this be a soul plan that they choose, like you just mentioned, like for this life, they have to experience that? Or it could be, kind of collective karma because everyone's going through it as part of the pandemic consequences? Or is it particularly the law of vibration of those beings acting here because they are at that vibration, so they attracted that circumstance?
Well, most likely it's a combination of all of those factors. Your vibration determines your entire experience in life. In other words, nothing can come into your field of experience unless your vibration allows it to come into your field. What I would suggest is, for anybody who's interested, go to my website, which is yoursoulsplan.com, click on resources or hold the cursor over resources in the main menu, and a pop-up menu will come up. You'll see coronavirus channeling in there. There's a channeling there that was done by a friend of mine, not my wife, somebody else, where they talk about the spiritual meaning and purpose of the virus. And essentially what is happening is that from a higher dimensional perspective, it's an opportunity to move more toward unity consciousness, to remember what unity consciousness is all about, because everybody is being affected by this in one way or another. So in some ways, it's bringing the world closer together. It's a shared experience. It's a step toward remembering union.
So the next question is, how do we know that our experiences are genuine and not mind playing tricks while going through between life's soul regression? And is there an easy way to recall our pre-birth plans?
So the way that you know your experience in a between life soul regression is genuine is through your intuition. It will have a feeling of truth to you. Trust your feelings. Your feelings are your guidance. Your feelings are your guide saying to you, yes, this is truth, or no, this is not truth. The mind doesn't really have a way of understanding what happens in a between lives regression. You know, the mind is essentially a third dimensional biocomputer, and all of the outputs are wholly dependent upon the inputs, and all the inputs come from the five senses. Well, the five senses are only picking up a very narrow band of what is actually out there. But the heart, the intuition, that is the way to really understand any kind of spiritual experience. And a between life soul regression is an interdimensional experience. A third dimensional brain has no framework for understanding an interdimensional experience. But you should come out of a between life soul regression with a feeling of resonance. There's actually a spiritual law called the law of resonance. Whenever you feel that feeling of resonance, that is your soul and your non-physical guidance team telling you, yes, there is truth here. Oh, and then the second part of the question, how can you find out about your pre-birth plan? There's actually a large number of ways to do that, and I have a list of them here, so I will just quickly read this off, and then we can talk about any you want to talk about. The between life soul regression, of course, working with mediums and channels who can access this information. Iridology. Iridology is the study of the structure of the iris in the human eye. Your life plan is encoded in the structure of your iris. Astrology. Any good astrologer should be able to tell you a lot about your pre-birth plan. Numerology. Meditation, which is a good way to get an answer to any question. Automatic writing, which is a way to train yourself to channel information from spirit. Just Google the words automatic writing. You'll find a lot of information about it. Dream work. Before you go to bed at night, speak out loud to your soul and to your guides. Ask one question. So it might be, what is my life plan? Then ask for a dream that answers your question. Also ask, and this is very important, ask that the dream be easy to understand and that you be awakened when the dream ends. Then keep pen and paper or a digital recorder next to your bed. If you wake up after a dream, write it down or describe it into the recorder. Otherwise, you probably won't remember it in the morning. This is a good way to get an answer to any question. There's a body of channel literature called the Michael system. Michael is a group consciousness, a collective that has channeled a lot of information about pre-birth planning, mostly related to soul age and soul archetype. It's a very complex system, and I'm not an expert in it. But if you Google the Michael system, you'll find a lot of information about it. There are a number of people around the world who channel Michael. You can set up a session with any of those people and speak to Michael directly and ask, what is your pre-birth plan? I believe in India, you have something called Nadi leaf reading. That is a way to find out. Palmistry, your palm print has your life plan encoded in it. There are people who know how to read that. Akashic record reading. There are many people who read the Akashic records. You can find them quite easily. Another body of channel literature called the Human Design System. Chinese face reading. The Chinese figured out that your life plan is encoded in the structure of your face. The Enneagram. And then there's a gentleman in the UK named Blue Marsden who came up with some kind of soul plan reading system. And he's trained a number of people who give these soul plan readings. I had one of them done a few years ago. I wouldn't say that it was life-changing, but it was interesting. There were some interesting things that came up. And then feelings of excitement or joy. We really don't understand that excitement and joy are communications direct from your soul. That is your soul saying, yes, whatever it is that you're doing that's creating those feelings, there's something there that's part of your pre-birth plan. And the last thing is time distortion, or what some people call the flow state. So probably for each one of you, there's at least one activity that when you do it, it will seem to you like only 10 minutes have gone by, but then when you look at the clock, it's 2 hours later. Any activity that creates that kind of time distortion, there's something there that's part of your life plan.
Thank you so much, Robert. That was incredible. So when we find out the root cause of a problem through between life soul regression, do we heal that problem permanently, especially if the challenge relates to relationship issues?
It depends really on what you do with the information. So your counsel will tell you, here's what you plan, here's why you made those plans, here's how you're doing in terms of learning the lessons you wanted to learn, and here are some ideas about how to better learn those lessons. Then at that point, it's up to you. You know, your counsel can't live your life for you, and no other being can vibrate for you, that's for sure. And again, your vibration determines everything you experience. So if you take the information the counsel gave you and really apply it to your life over an extended period of time, you can expect whatever the issue is to heal, at least partially and quite possibly completely. You know, in my first book, Your Soul's Plan, there's a chapter about accidents, which aren't really accidents, they're planned before birth. And one of the stories there is about a woman who's blown up in a bomb explosion. She planned that before she was born because she wanted to heal herself and then go on to become a healer for others. Well, after the bomb explosion took place, she was in the hospital, lying in her bed. She was in a lot of pain. And she heard for the first time in her life a guide speak to her. And the guide told her that this was part of her life plan and that she planned it because she wanted to go on to become a great healer. Well, she really, really worked with that information over a period of many years. And it did two things for her. It allowed her to forgive completely the person who planted the bomb. And then it allowed her to get to a place of true gratitude for having been blown up in a bomb explosion. So that shows you what you can do with an awareness of your pre-birth plan. But the reason I mention it is that it took a period of years. This isn't something that happened overnight for her. She had to really work with that awareness of her pre-birth plan on a daily basis for years to get to forgiveness and to get to gratitude. But if she can do it, everybody can do it.
So the next question is, can a parent soul who committed suicide be involved in interdimensional parenting?
Can they? Yes. Would they be? It depends on what they want to do, what the parent who remains on Earth wants, and what is for the highest good of all beings. But it's certainly possible. Most likely, a soul who takes their own life is going to have some healing to do on the other side. And I imagine they would focus on their own healing before they would really start to do a whole lot in the way of interdimensional parenting. But there's no linear time on the other side. So from our perspective, the healing can occur quite quickly. So from a linear time perspective, they might be able to start doing the interdimensional parenting very quickly.
Can you share your thoughts on soul plans related to irrational fears and phobias? Like people do have some insect related, reptilian kingdom related phobias, or it could be anything, claustrophobia or anything like that.
What I see in my work as a hypnotist is that fears, are, especially specific fears like the ones you just mentioned, those are usually the result of one or more very difficult experiences in one or more past lives. So a common example would be something like somebody has a fear of heights, and when we do the past life portion of the between lives soul regression, they're taken back to a life, let's say in medieval times, in which they lived in a castle, and one day somebody pushed them off the turret at the top of the castle and they plummeted to their death. That would explain the fear of heights. And it's the same thing with fear of spiders or claustrophobia or whatever it might be. It's generally the result of an experience in a past life. Now, what's really interesting about this is that in hypnosis, something called abreaction often occurs. Abreaction is just a fancy clinical term for a very well-documented phenomenon in which, by going back and re-experiencing the past life origin of a current life issue, there's sometimes partial and sometimes complete healing of the issue in the current lifetime. Nobody knows how or why abreaction works, but it is a very well-documented phenomenon, quite common.
I have seen Brian West doing
Okay.
that. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
This is a question from a woman in 30s. She has an alcoholic father, abusive relationship of parents. So she turned a young caregiver. She wants to have a relationship now and is working on self-love and codependency issues since 5 years, but nothing is materializing. Also forgiven her parents and is successful in her life, but relationship aspect is unfulfilling. She's been working on blockages but unable to crack the soul plan. So she feels she's stagnant and is not able to move forward.
My advice to that person would be to stop trying so hard. And if you can get yourself to do it, maybe for some period of time, stop trying at all. Shakti Gawain wrote a very good book about this, and I can't remember the title now, but the basic message of her book is that she calls it efforting. And she says that efforting is really not the way to accomplish things. And I agree with her. You know, we're trained in this period of time, we're trained to believe that we have to work hard, and the harder we work, the more likely it is we can make all our dreams come true. That really is not the way the universe works. That's actually kind of the opposite of the way the universe works. What you want is to be in the flow. And once you're in the flow, things happen magically and easily and effortlessly. So then the question becomes, how do you get yourself into the flow? The way to get yourself into the flow, number one, set an intention to be in the flow. And number two, drop any resistance you have to anything. So the person asking that question is clearly in a state of resistance to not having a partner. When you are in resistance to anything at all, it's like you're giving a big energetic no to the universe. Now, in your mind, like in her mind, for example, she's saying no just to being single and not having a partner. But that isn't the message the universe gets. It only hears no. And it takes it as a global no. It takes it as a no to health, a no to abundance, a no to love, a no to spiritual clarity. It takes it as a no to every blessing that you actually want in your life. So you've probably heard the expression, when it rains, it pours. That expression describes this phenomenon. What happens is something that a person perceives as negative happens or doesn't happen. In this case, a relationship not manifesting. Then the person goes into resistance, a little bit of resistance to that one thing that they don't like. But then, because they're in a little bit of resistance and giving a big no to all the blessings of the universe, of the flow, then all kinds of things start to go wrong. And that's when it starts to pour, so to speak. So it's vitally important to reduce resistance completely if you possibly can. And that will put you in the flow, and then things will just happen magically.
Thank you so much, Rob. The next question is, can there be unwanted consequences of going through between life soul regression? And do you particularly guide people to accept what comes out of it?
I have not seen any kind of unpleasant or unexpected consequences from doing a between life soul regression. And I do advise people to accept whatever comes out of it. You know, your non-physical guidance team, which is very much present with you as you do a between lives regression, they are going to create whatever experience is for your highest good. Now, that doesn't always mean that it will be a pleasant experience, especially the past life portion. You might be shown a past life scene or scenes that are hard to look at, but Spirit will only show you what is for your highest good to see and what you're ready to see. And that's why I advise everybody accept whatever Spirit shows you.
Do we need to be evolved as a soul to qualify in knowing our soul's plan? In your experience, have you mostly worked with mature or evolved souls? If not, is there a different approach you take according to the soul's age?
I don't do any kind of research or examination to figure out the soul age of my clients, but an interest in pre-birth planning is pretty much a mature or old soul undertaking. For all of you who are here as part of this call or anybody who watches it later, if you're interested enough in the idea of pre-birth planning to tune into this, it's very likely in my mind that you are mature or old soul. But sometimes young souls find their way to me, and that usually happens through some form of trauma. Something happens that traumatizes them. They're in emotional and or physical pain. They're looking for relief. They're looking for solutions. And that opens them up to things like pre-birth planning that normally they would never be interested in. So there is a portion of the client base that I think is younger souls, but the vast majority would be mature and old.
The next question is interesting. It says, what would be your advice to someone who's divided between logical, rational, and intuitive mind? How do we develop discernment?
So first of all, I want to say, I don't think it's an either or choice. I don't think you have to choose between your mind and your heart, or your mind and your intuition. You can integrate those two things and basically have the mind be in service to the heart. That, I think, is what human beings were originally intended to do. And then I think we lost our way, especially in Western societies. It might be different in India, but here in the West, logic and reason have really been made king. And we are taught from a very young age to use our minds and ignore our hearts, ignore our intuition. And I think that has caused a lot of problems in the world. I don't think that was the original intention for humanity. I think we were given heart and mind because both are valuable. Both are good sources of guidance, especially when they're integrated and especially when the mind is in service to the heart. Now, if you are somebody who has been trained by maybe your parents or your teachers at school or your society to value reason and value logic, and maybe you've been using that as your major mode of operating in the world for a long time, and I fall into that category myself, then you have to undertake what amounts to a big re-education project. And you have to re-educate yourself about the value of heart, the value of intuition. And when you catch yourself making purely logical decisions, then just set a conscious intention to incorporate intuition in whatever decision you're making. It takes practice, and the longer you've spent using only your mind, the more practice it's going to take. But I think that that's what these times are calling for. We've lost our way by placing too much value on logic and reason. And now humanity is in a situation where we really have to start using our hearts, or, we might not make it as a species.
Thank you. In certain cases of mental disability, or even the case of John Elmore, who chose AIDS in his soul plan, there is very little love or compassion that these souls receive from others or even from their families. Are these plans chosen to balance energies and self-healing on a larger scale? Or have you found a key trigger behind a particular suffering?
So what's happening in a lot of those cases, let's go back to John Elmore, since that's who they're talking about. For those who don't recognize that name, this is the first story in my first book, Your Soul's Plan. John Elmore is the person I interviewed for that chapter. He planned before he was born to have the AIDS virus. Now, why did he do that? Well, we all choose a mission as part of our pre-birth planning. So he and another soul in his soul group were being shown scenes in their pre-birth planning of what life on Earth is like at this point in time. And they came away from looking at these scenes with the impression that judgment is a big problem for humanity. People are just way too judgmental. And they wanted that to be their mission. They wanted to do something about that. So the plan they came up with is that one of them would give John Elmore the AIDS virus, And then John would present everybody in his life from that point forward with the opportunity to put judgment aside and feel compassion in their heart. Now, there are different reasons for wanting to have this kind of pre-birth plan. It's largely about helping humanity with judgment, but there's more to it than that. Let's go back to the divine virtues. Which divine virtues could be cultivated by John Elmore through this very difficult experience? Well, compassion for all the judgmental people who are judging him, empathy, patience, because it's going to take a long time to make a dent in humanity's tendency to judge, faith in spirit, faith in his pre-birth plan, trust in spirit, trust in his pre-birth plan, and many other virtues as well. The other thing that's happening here, and this is very important to understand, many people, there are millions all over the world who are light workers. And the pre-birth plan of a light worker, and John Elmore is a light worker, is fundamentally different than the pre-birth plan of somebody who's not a light worker. And the main difference is that if you are planning before birth to be a light worker, what you plan to do is go into a vibration of whatever it is that you want to change in the world, experience that firsthand, use that as a catalyst for your own personal growth, and then by raising your own vibration, change the vibration from within. So John's plan was to go into the energy of judgment, experience very harsh judgments against himself, use that as a catalyst to cultivate his divine virtues. That raises his vibration, and then he changes the vibration of judgment from within the vibration of judgment. That's the key to a light worker's plan. In other words, if you're planning before birth to be a light worker, you can't, metaphorically speaking, say something like, well, I'm going to ride in on a white horse and hand out candy bars to make everybody feel good. That's not how light work works. You have to change the vibration from within the vibration.
So the next question is, you've written about attention and intention a lot. These are the key virtues to bring radical change in anyone's life. What about people who plan for attention deficit disorders? Is this a way of suffering they choose to balance their energies? What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a story in Your Soul's Plan. It's the chapter about handicapped children. A woman who has two children who are on the autism spectrum. One has mild attention deficit disorder. The other has much more severe autism. So the story there is that both of her sons had a past life in Nazi Germany in which they worked in propaganda for the Nazis. In other words, they knew what the truth was, but they intentionally distorted the truth for purposes that were not so loving or not so noble. When they had their life reviewed, they saw that they had done this. And so they wanted to make amends. And so the plan they came up with is that they would have, in one case, mild ADD, in another case, severe autism, because this way they would be challenged to communicate truth. And by being challenged to communicate truth, they would come to value truth itself, which they didn't in the past life. So that was the gist of what was going on there. There could be many, many other reasons for planning attention deficit disorder. I think a lot of the children who have that, they're coming in as teachers to their parents. They're helping them cultivate divine virtues like acceptance, patience, perseverance, unconditional love. They're there essentially in service to the parents.
Rob, just to follow up on this, do you think all diseases mostly are karmic?
I don't know that I would say mostly. Certainly many are, but there are also many diseases, many illnesses that are not karmic and are the result of free will decisions that are made in the current lifetime, unrelated to any karma that the person was bringing in. So really, it could be either, or it could be a combination of both.
Thank you. Is between life soul regression recommended for all? What if the intent of getting into it is curiosity and not spiritual growth? Wouldn't nature give us clues when it's our time?
Well, life gives you clues all the time, but sometimes the clues are hard to notice. And if you notice them, they can be hard to interpret. So between lives regression makes all of that a whole lot easier. You get the information in a way that it's crystal clear. You know, it's expressed in words that are spoken or sent telepathically by your counsel. What was the rest of the question?
Is it recommended for everyone?
I would like people to be usually 18 years or older. Again, sometimes in the past life portion of between lives regression, you see scenes in past lives that are emotionally challenging. So you need to have enough in the way of personal resources to be able to process that after the session is over. And there is a particular healer who I work with as a support person. And we tell people in the workshops, if you have any difficulty at all processing any part of your regression, contact this person. She has the tools to help you process whatever it is. But generally, I find if somebody is 18 or older, they have the tools to do that. If they're younger, there's a much greater chance that they might not have those tools.
Also, if the intent of getting into it is curiosity and not spiritual growth?
There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you can start off just being curious, and then you learn all sorts of things about your pre-birth plan that leads to tremendous spiritual growth, even though that wasn't your original intention. So that's fine.
Beautiful. So during between life session, can we also step in our future lives?
You can ask questions about future lives, but that information is much harder to come by. Brian Weiss wrote an entire book about future life progression. And if you read that book and compare the stories to the stories in his other books, there's really no comparison. The stories in the future life progressions are much more vague and nebulous. They don't have a lot of specific details to them for the most part. And there's a good reason for this, which is that whenever you inquire about anything in the future, whether it's in a regression or a mediumship session or a channeling session, the beings who are responding to your question are reading energy potentials that exist only at the moment when the question is asked. Well, the moment after the question is answered, the energy potentials start to shift. And the further you get away in linear time from the point of asking the question, the more the potentials have shifted. So basically, it makes it difficult for non-physical beings to accurately predict what's going to happen. And it's even harder for them to predict when something is going to happen. They're not in linear time. They, for the most part, don't have a clear comprehension of what linear time is, just as we can't comprehend a realm of no time. And so when you ask these kind of questions in a future life progression, a lot of times you get nebulous answers.
Thank you. And the last question is, can you share some insights on the Ukraine war and the genocide of people in Kashmir, India? Is it a collective plan, karma? And do all the souls of the same soul group agree to this plan in their pre-birth planning?
So let me point people again to my website, which is yoursoulsplan.com. And again, if you hold the cursor over resources in the main menu, one of the things in the sub-menu is a particular channeling that we had done about Ukraine. That explains in great detail what is going on there. I myself have not done any research other than that channeling on the Ukraine, and have not researched Kashmir. So I want to speak about another large-scale event that I do know something about, and I think this will apply to Ukraine and also to Kashmir. So you'll remember that a number of years ago, there was a tsunami that hit Southeast Asia, and about 100,000 people were killed in that. I've looked into that, and what Spirit told me was that those 100,000 souls, before they were born, they all got together and they said basically, we want the world to be at a certain vibration by a certain point in linear time. And if it looks like the world is not going to get there, then we agree to give our lives in a large-scale natural disaster, because we know that the result of that disaster will be a worldwide outpouring of love and compassion that will raise the frequency of the entire planet. And that is exactly what happened. You might remember all the governments of the world temporarily put aside their differences to coordinate funneling aid into Southeast Asia. So that worldwide outpouring of love and compassion greatly elevated the frequency of the entire planet. So this worked out exactly the way those souls planned. You know, from the level of the personality, it was a terrible tragedy, but from the level of spirit, from where a spirit guide sits in a higher dimension, it worked out exactly as it was planned and was a great blessing to the entire world. So I think in the long run, the same thing applies to Ukraine and to Kashmir. If you just look at the surface of what is happening, obviously it's a great tragedy from a human perspective, but in the long run, most likely there will be changes in other people, in countries of the world, similar to what you saw with the tsunami in Southeast Asia.
Thank you, Rob. We just to follow up one more thing on like the letting go and the focus and flow part that you were talking about. Many of the people grieve the loss of their loved ones. So do you think, and is there any process that the letting go of control and, you know, of holding on to that grief would be easier by any, can you just share something on that? And then we can just unmute any participants who want to ask any questions.
Yes, yes.
Well, in my 2-day online workshop, we do a regression the first day, which I call contact a deceased loved one. And very often people will make contact with multiple loved ones who are back on the other side, including pets. There are always a number, not always, but many times there are a number of pets who show up as well. So I think that one of the most healing things anybody can experience if a loved one has crossed over is some form of contact with the loved one, because always they will assure you that they are well, they are happy, they are thriving on the other side, that they love you, that you will see them again when this lifetime is over. And people come out of those regressions feeling much, much better about what has happened. It's really very, very healing. So the next 2-day workshop is May 21st and 22nd. If you go to Your Soul's Plan and click on events in the main menu, scroll down, click on the link for the May 21 and 22 workshop. That contact a deceased loved one regression is very, very healing. The other thing you can do is work with a medium or a channel who can contact loved ones on the other side. That serves the same purpose as a regression. Talk to your loved one through the medium or through the channel. Let them reassure you that they love you and that they are well and thriving on the other side. I think that's the most healing thing anybody can do.
Sir, another question. In your book, Your Soul's Gift, you have mentioned that sometimes a loved one, even a spirit guide, incarnate as pets. This is in contradiction to the spiritual law, the law of constant progression. This law states that we always move forward in our evolution. We do not go backwards. Please explain this.
Well, the question assumes that by incarnating as a pet, that you are moving backward. But I think all of us could agree that there are many, many animals who are more loving than many people. So I would not say that incarnating as a cat or a dog, for example, would necessarily mean that you are moving backwards. It could actually mean that you are moving forward.
Thank you. Now, I think Meenakshi has a question. She can
Yes,
ask.
Meenakshi.
Hello, and thank you so much for coming here. I'm like a big fan of yours. And your books have actually personally had a huge impact on my life. So I have a question, which I think was in some way the first question, but if you think you can still add something to it. The question is, when, organ donation seems like a no-brainer to me. But when people donate organs, are they interfering with the pre-birth plan? And or, people come with burning their karmas. So does that get stalled when we donate our organs?
I haven't researched that specifically, but I don't see any way that that would interfere with somebody's pre-birth plan. Presumably, the motivation in doing that would be love and concern for people, either the specific person who's getting the donation or just people in general. And if that's the motivation, if that's the intention, then that's a positive thing. That's not going to interfere with your pre-birth plan at all.
No, the pre-birth plan of the person who's getting the organ, because they might have planned this suffering to learn some lesson. So when they are getting the organ, are we kind of interfering with them, people who donate organs?
That would be the same answer as, when people ask if you do a between lives regression, are you interfering with your pre-birth plan? The answer is no, and for the same reason. Because you as a soul, if you really wanted to have that experience of whatever it is not to have a functioning organ, it's very easy to arrange for that. You can incarnate at a point in linear time in which there is no such thing as organ donation. And that would force you to have that experience. So if you're in a point in linear time where you can receive an organ donation, that itself is part of the pre-birth plan.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Rob, we have another question. There are 3 ladies, age 65, sisters, and they're facing some kind of, like, they're attacked from all the sides, financial, physical, and emotionally. They help their in-laws and the families, but they end up getting no respect and are severely disrespected, and they're very unfulfilled in their lives. They are meditating for like 2 hours, doing all they can to nurture their soul, but they are kind of stuck, and they want to come out of this situation and do not wish to carry forward the situation to the next life. So is there anything that you can say to that? They think that it's collectively like 3 sisters karma that they're facing together.
Well, what you want to do ultimately in that situation, and it might take a long time, possibly many years to get there, but you want to rise above whatever resentment or animosity you feel in regard to the way that you're being treated. And this is a very common issue for people who are spiritually awake. Many spiritually awake people find that they are the only awake person in their family, and they find their interactions with their family to be very unsatisfying for that reason. So the way to handle that and rise above it, instead of focusing on what you're not getting, ask yourself, what am I not giving? Go into every interaction with them asking, what am I not giving? And now, how can I give it? Ask yourself before every time you see the family, how can I be of service? What is missing here that I can offer? If you keep the focus on those questions and not on what you're not getting, the resentment will diminish. It might resolve entirely, perhaps. And the more it diminishes, the more you rise above this challenge, and then you don't have to try it again in another lifetime.
Do we take any other questions? I think
it's this time. Yes, for meditation.
Well, I just want to say something in regard to, somebody put in the chat box, can you please plan a workshop for Indians with an affordable cost? I want you to know we are talking about sometime putting together a workshop just for people in India, which because of the time difference will require me to stay up all night, but I'm happy to do it, even though I'm not a night person. So I think this will happen at some point. I don't know when, but if you go to yoursoulsplan.com, sign up for the email newsletter The newsletter will announce whenever we do the India workshop.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you.
You want me to lead the meditation now?
Yes,
Please.
Okay.
you.
please.
So this is going to be a short meditation to hopefully get some information about your pre-birth plan. Close your eyes, please. Take a few long, slow, deep breaths, belly breaths, diaphragmatic breaths. Gently breathing in, gently breathing out. Gently breathing in, gently breathing out. I want you to start by visualizing the room where your pre-birth planning took place. The room back on the other side where you planned your current lifetime. And I want you to begin by visualizing and also touching and feeling all the details of this room. So notice what kind of material are the walls made of. Is it marble, maybe brick, maybe wood? What does the marble or the brick feel like? Touch it with one of your hands. Maybe the marble feels cool and smooth. Maybe the brick feels a little bit hard and rough. And notice the floor. Is there carpeting? If there is carpeting, what colors do you see? Are there any patterns in the carpet? Maybe the floor is wood or linoleum. And notice the lighting in the room. Is it bright or dim? Do you hear any sounds in the room? Does the room have furniture? Is there a sofa, a table, chairs? What kind of material is the sofa made of? Is it cloth? Is it leather? What did the chairs and the table look like? Are there any fragrances in the room? Maybe you smell cedar, maybe sage. Do you feel the air circulating in the room? Does it feel cool as it brushes your skin? So visualize all the details in this room. Notice what you see, what you touch, what you hear, what you smell. Really immerse yourself in all the sensory details of everything that is in this room. And then I want you to visualize that at one end of the room, there's a door, a wooden door. And this door swings open, and slowly, one by one, all these significant people in your current life start to walk into the room. Your mother walks in, your father walks in. If you have brothers or sisters, they walk into the room. Your grandparents on your mother's side come into the room. Your grandparents on your father's side, they also walk into the room. If you have children, your sons, your daughters, or grandchildren, they also walk into this room. And then your cousins, your uncles, your aunts, your nieces, your nephews. And then all of your friends walk into this room. Both the friends who are in your life today and every past friend you've ever had. Each one of them slowly walks into this room. And then all of your teachers, at every level of education, they walk into the room. All of your employers, both past and present, and your coworkers, they too come into this room. And then the people who have most challenged you, who aren't already in the room, they too walk in. If you perceive yourself as having enemies, either past or present, your quote unquote enemies walk into the room. All the people who have most challenged you in this lifetime walk into the room. And then any other people who have had a major positive impact on your life, all of those people come into the room as well. Perhaps your spiritual teachers. So one by one, all these significant people from your current lifetime come into this room. And all of these people assemble at one side of the room in various rows, standing shoulder to shoulder, and all of them are looking at you. And you notice that all of these people, even your enemies, even the ones who have most challenged you, all of them are smiling as they look at you. And also, you feel great love for you, radiating from every single one of these people, even the enemies, even the ones who have most challenged you. You can tell that all of these people are very happy to see you and that they love you. And you feel wave after wave of love coming from each one of them toward you. Now I want you to survey all the faces in this crowd. And then pick one or two or three people, maybe more, who you would like to know more about what you planned with that person before either of you was born. So walk up to that person, look them in the eye, and say to them, I have forgotten what you and I planned together before we were born. Would you please remind me? And then just be quiet for a couple of minutes to receive their answer. The answer may come as words that you hear telepathically in your mind, or words that are spoken aloud in this room. Or the answer may come as an image of something that appears in your mind. Or it may come as a feeling, an emotion that washes over you. Or it could come as a download of information, a sudden, full, immediate knowing of the answer to your question without hearing anything or without feeling anything, and even without knowing how you know. You just know. So take a couple minutes to receive that person's response, and then go to someone else, ask the same question. I have forgotten what you and I planned together before we were born. Would you please remind me? And then be quiet and allow yourself to receive their answer. So we'll take a few minutes of silence now so that you may ask this question of anyone you like. So take another minute now to receive any additional information that any of those people would like to give you. And now thank all the people who shared something with you. And thank all those who didn't. Thank all of them for coming here to be with you today. And thank all of them for whatever they have taught you or are teaching you in your current lifetime. Let them tell you once again how much they love you. And if you like, tell them how much you love them. I'm going to count slowly now from 1 to 10. And as I count, I want you to return the focus of your attention to your physical body of today, in the room you're sitting in, gently opening your eyes at the count of 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, coming more fully into your physical body of today. 8, coming more fully into your physical body of today. 9, coming more fully into your physical body of today. And 10, coming fully into your physical body of today, eyes open, awake, alert, conscious, and clear.
Thank you so much, Rob. Still feeling that trance, can't speak.
Yeah, we did it very quickly. This is actually something it's good to spend more time with. Really at least 30 minutes, if not longer. Let more people speak to you, let them say more. But now you know how to do it. I put links in the chat box to the upcoming events. You'll have to scroll back a little bit to see them. But the April 24 workshop is in there. That's a one-day between live soul regression workshop. There's a 2-day on May 21st and 22nd. In the 2-day, the second day is the Between Lives Soul Regression. The first day I give a talk, we do the Divine Virtues exercise, and we do the Contact a Deceased Loved One regression. And then I also included a link to the monthly membership program called Rise to the Path, which I do with my wife. That's about activating your highest vibrational life plan. And again, I invite everybody sign up for the newsletter at yoursoulsplan.com. We will eventually do a workshop for people in India, and that will be announced in the newsletter.
Well, thank you so much, Rob. Everyone's just sending love, light, and a lot of gratitude in the chat box, as I saw. And we all love you a lot. And we are really, really grateful for all that you've done for all humanity by writing these beautiful books. And looking forward to maybe seeing you in person. I'm in Toronto, so maybe if you host physical sessions, maybe we can do something. And apart from that, for sure, the other links that you have sent, I will again make sure to post them in the groups so more people can have visibility of those. So thank you so much. Love and gratitude to you.
I love all you guys too. It is a pleasure to be here with you. And if I can ever be of service to any of you at any time in the future, even if it's years from now, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Lots of gratitude. Lots of gratitude.
My pleasure.
We'll end this. Bye-bye. Yeah, thank you.
तो चलिए फ्रेंड्स, जिनको इंग्लिश समझ में आती होगी वो समझ रहे होंगे। सर ने बहुत अच्छे से आंसर दिए। कुछ एक आंसर्स में मैं भी थोड़ा आश्चर्य कर रही थी क्योंकि बुक से थोड़े से डिफरेंट लग रहे थे, पर बहुत अच्छा नॉलेज दिया सर ने। और इनका ट्रांसलेशन अब नहीं कर पाएंगे तो अंकिता और माही कल करेंगे। आप लोग शाम को 5 बजे आफ्टर मेडिटेशन।
थैंक यू सो मच।
हम लोगों ने सब क्वेश्चंस को लेने की कोशिश की है। मेनली मेरे ख्याल से काफी अच्छे क्वेश्चन थे, काफी लोगों को आंसर मिले होंगे। तो इसका तो हिंदी ट्रांसलेशन होगा कल माही और अंकिता आफ्टर मेडिटेशन लेंगे। तो कल 5 बजे जब मेडिटेशन खत्म हो जाएगा तो अंकिता और माही की वाणी से आप लोग उसके उत्तरों को सुनिएगा और अपनी एनलाइटमेंट शेयर करिएगा। ठीक है फ्रेंड्स, तो अब इजाजत है।
थैंक यू आंटी, थैंक यू सो मच। बहुत ही अच्छा सेशन था और आई थिंक उन्होंने हमें भी अभी सब कुछ, आई थिंक अंकिता यू अग्री विथ मी कि हमें सब एक्यूमुलेट करना पड़ेगा अपने माइंड में।
पूरी रात बैठी हुई है, दोनों जने खाली हो, बैठ के आराम से लिखना।
तो काफी कुछ उन्होंने बताया और उसको सबको आपसे सजेशंस लेंगे।
बस मेरा हो गया काम, तुम लोग करो और कल मिलते हैं 4 बजे सब फ्रेंड्स इसी मीटिंग आईडी में, इसी पासपोर्ट में। यही हमारे प्यारे प्यारे फ्रेंड्स के साथ। मेडिटेशन बहुत हाई एनर्जी का था, मुझे एक्सपीरियंस नहीं हुआ खुद के। कई लोगों को हुआ होगा एक्सपीरियंस, बाकी बहुत हाई एनर्जी थी अभी तक के। मतलब ये जो मेरा फोरहेड है अभी तक बहुत ज़्यादा सर्कुलेट हो रहा। अभी जाके मैं थोड़ी देर आईज बंद करके ही बैठी हुई है। हमको बात भी नहीं करना चाहिए। कल मिलते हैं फ्रेंड्स। 2 दिन हमारा मेडिटेशन है, इंटेंस मेडिटेशन। उसके बाद शेयरिंग चालू हो जाएंगे। फिर कल बहुत बड़ा विजडम शेयरिंग है विद माही एंड अंकिता। थैंक यू वेरी मच। और पूजा को भी बहुत बहुत थैंक्स जिन्होंने इतने सारे क्वेश्चंस को देखा, फिल्टर किया, उसको फ्रेम किया। तो माही, अंकिता और पूजा तीनों को थैंक्स। अंकिता के ही कारण रॉबर्ट श्वार्ट्ज ज्ञान भारत तक के आए, उन्हीं की ही पहल थी, उन्होंने ही मुझे सबसे पहले सजेस्ट किया था कि आंटी इसको उनको बुलाना चाहिए, क्योंकि वो 1-2 सेशन अटेंड कर चुकी थी। तो थैंक यू अंकिता, लव यू। ऐसे ही अच्छे अच्छे मास्टर्स को हमारे ज्ञान भारत में लेकर आइए, क्योंकि आप कनाडा में रहती हैं तो आपके लिए बहुत इजी रहता है उनसे फोन में अपने टाइमिंग्स में बात करना और उनके साथ कोऑर्डिनेट करके उनको समझाना। तो थैंक यू अंकिता, थैंक यू वेरी मच, लव यू।
Love you, Auntie. Love you. Love all of Gyan Bharat. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ankita.
थैंक यू पूजा। और 8 तारीख को फिर हमारे साथ इंटरनेशनल स्पीकर रहेंगी डीना मरियम। उसके लिए आप क्वेश्चंस फ्रेम कर सकते हैं, जिन्होंने भी सीतायन या अनटोल्ड स्टोरी ऑफ सीता पढ़ा है या कोई और बुक्स पढ़ी है, तो उनसे रिलेटेड आप क्वेश्चंस पूछ सकते हैं, या और भी उनकी पास्ट लाइफ के बारे में आप पूछ सकते हैं। तो कल मिलते हैं फ्रेंड्स, गुड नाइट, शुभ रात्रि।